Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. I am Joey Francis, your life, love, and relationship coach. Thank you so much for joining me. Last week, I talked about when love is worth fighting for. I wanted to celebrate the people who stay when the relationship has a healthy future, even though getting there will take some work. Looking at a person you love during a difficult time and deciding that one painful chapter doesn't get to erase everything the two of you built can be a beautiful thing. But as I was working through that episode, another question kept showing up. How do you know whether the relationship in front of you is actually worth saving? Because fight for love sounds wonderful until it reaches somebody who has already spent 5 years fighting alone. That person may hear last week's message and convince themselves to give the relationship another year. Their partner gets another chance while the person doing all the work receives another promise. And I don't want that message to become an excuse for more of the same. A relationship can matter deeply and still reach a point where one person, keyword one person, cannot save it. So today, I want to go further and find the point where healthy commitment crosses into self-abandonment. The real test is whether the change in front of you can survive once the fear of losing you is gone. And see, this conversation has two questions. Question one, is the relationship worth saving? And question two, is it still capable of being saved? And see, they sound similar, but obviously they're not. The love and history you share can explain why the relationship matters. Even the life you build together cannot prove the two of you can make it healthy again. Its value comes from everything it has meant to you. Whether it survives depends on what both people are willing to do now. That distinction is going to be uncomfortable for some people because love can keep answering the first question long after evidence has answered the second. You might still look at your partner and remember the person who made you feel safe. Years of beautiful memories could be sitting beside a current reality that almost feels impossible to accept. When you know what the relationship used to be, it becomes very easy to keep treating the past as proof of what it could become again. And see, the past deserves consideration. It doesn't get to overrule the present. And before I go any further, if you are afraid of your partner or dealing with abuse, this is not the podcast for you. Your immediate focus should be safety and qualified support. So please don't use an episode about saving relationships to convince yourself that enduring pain and danger is an act of love. It's not. It's not worth it. So for everybody else, let's begin with the foundation. I was just checking because I already recorded this episode once before. Let's begin with the foundation. The blueprint method. And I talk about this all the time because you need to know what a relationship must provide before your emotions get loud enough to negotiate against you. Your blueprint isn't a list of everything you would enjoy. It contains the things that genuinely determine whether a relationship can fit your life, including the way you need to be treated and the future you are trying to build. When a relationship is damaged, go back to that foundation. Does the person standing in front of you still fit it? And notice that I said person standing in front of you. I didn't ask whether they fit when you met or whether they could fit in it again if every promise eventually comes true. Who are they today? And that doesn't mean judging their entire character by the worst month of their life. Grief can accept someone's ability to show up, while someone having an illness may shift the weight of a relationship for a long time. See, human beings, we struggle. And the person you love won't always have full access to the best parts of themselves. This goes for you too. The question is whether the struggle has placed pressure on a healthy foundation or revealed that the foundation no longer exists. Imagine that your partner loses a parent and emotionally disappears for a while. They may become more distant and much less affectionate than the person you chose. The relationship will feel different. You may even feel lonely inside it. Now look beneath the behavior. Can they acknowledge what is happening and the effect it is having on you? See, their willingness to seek help or talk honestly once they have the capacity will tell you something important. Grief explains why the relationship changed, while their character appears in the way they handled that truth. Compare that with someone who repeatedly uses every difficult moment as permission to mistreat you. The reason changes, yet your role and the way you're treated doesn't. You keep absorbing the damage and waiting for life to become calm enough for them to treat you properly. And see, here's the thing. In those types of situations, life will always provide another excuse. A difficult period can alter how someone behaves. Once the foundation is damaged, what you can reasonably expect from the relationship changes with it. Love alone cannot make the decision. You can care deeply for someone whose current choices no longer fit the life you want. Understanding why they became this way still doesn't make the relationship workable. Compassion can give you context without requiring you to build your future around behavior that keeps hurting you. So begin there. Does the relationship still have the right foundation? Or are you trying to repair something that would require one of you to become a fundamentally different person? Communication can solve a misunderstanding. It won't make two incompatible futures agree with each other. Once the foundation still makes sense, we move to effort. And listen, mutual effort rarely looks perfectly equal. People love saying that relationships should be 50-50. But I don't know many lives that operate that cleanly. Illness or a career problem can temporarily change how much one person is capable of carrying. During those periods, loving your partner may mean taking on more than your usual share. The exact amount is less important than whether both people remain responsible for where the relationship is going. A person with limited capacity can still be honest. They can recognize what you are carrying and take the steps available to them. Even a small amount of self-directed effort tells you that they haven't handed you complete ownership of the relationship. The problem begins when one person becomes responsible for the entire solution. They start every serious conversation, and before long, they are explaining the problem to a therapist they had to find. Once the promises are made, they also have to monitor whether anything happens. At some point, you stop participating in repair and start managing another adult. The relationship has turned into an unpaid project management with shared bills. It is surprisingly easy to become incredibly good at it too. Over time, you learn when to bring things up and how much truth the relationship can handle without another explosion. From the outside, it may look as though things are improving. What has actually improved is your ability to prevent it from falling apart. There's a question that can reveal this very quickly. If you stopped pushing the repair forward, would anything continue moving? Think about that one honestly. Would your partner still follow through on the agreement and bring the issues back up because it mattered to them? Perhaps the entire process would go silent until you became upset enough to restart it all. See, mutual effort means the relationship doesn't rely on one person's constant pressure to create movement. Your partner may move slowly. They may need support, especially when the issue involves mental health or a deep-rooted pattern. Support should help them take responsibility. Once your help has become a replacement for their responsibility, the relationship has now moved into a dangerous territory. See, two people cannot build a healthy future while one acts as the parole officer and the other only behaves when they're watched. There should be some part of the repair that belongs to your partner without you having to assign it. And yes, both people need to examine themselves. Sometimes the person who feels hurt has also contributed to the dynamic. Accountability doesn't have to be equal for it to exist on both sides. For instance, if one person cheated, for example, their partner's imperfections did not make that decision for them. The betrayal belongs to the person who chose it. Any wider problems in the relationship can still be discussed without spreading responsibility for the affair around until nobody's accountable for anything. So be accurate. Shared repair doesn't mean shared blame. And see, now we need to talk about change because this is where a lot of people get trapped. An apology is emotional. Change is behavioral. People can mean every word of an apology when they say it. Fear and shame can make someone completely sincere at 2:00 in the morning while you are packing a bag. That moment still doesn't tell you what they will do after the fear passes. Promises are usually strongest when the consequences are staring you right in the face. Evidence appears later. Once daily life returns and nobody is threatening to leave, what happens then? See, genuine change becomes visible without constant reminders. The person takes initiative because they understand the problem, rather than waiting until you become angry enough to mention it again. Their behavior should also make your job easier over time. If trust was damaged by dishonesty, you should see greater openness where secrecy used to live. Someone who struggled with anger needs to handle frustrations differently before it becomes another apology. The exact evidence depends on the wound, but it should eventually appear in the place where the relationship was hurt. Otherwise, the two of you may be doing a lot of talking while living inside the same pattern. And I've said it before, an apology without change becomes a reset button, essentially meaning the relationship returns to normal long enough for everybody to relax until the next incident starts the process all over again. That cycle can feel like repair because each conversation creates temporary relief, and that relief hits us like a reward. And the reward feels like progress. But see, the point here is not to have these situations happen at all anymore. This is where being self-aware matters. If you see the same roller coasters of emotions over a period of time, a good weekend means very little if the last 6 months keep telling you the same story. But that doesn't mean setbacks can't happen. A setback can happen while someone is changing a deeply rooted behavior, especially during something like addiction recovery or while learning emotional regulation. The response to a setback tells you a great deal. Did they disclose it honestly and take ownership before you discovered it? What did they change in their plan once it became obvious? Handled with responsibility, a setback can still sit inside genuine progress. Secrecy followed by excuses usually points back towards the old pattern. At this point, you have to stop measuring change by how convincing the explanation sounds. Some people are incredible at explaining themselves. They can trace every bad decision back to childhood and somehow finish the conversation with it all being your fault. Narcissists. Fine. The explanations, hey, you know what? Maybe it is true. What are they doing with that understanding? Self-awareness has value when it changes the next decision. Without that, you are just being led to the top of the circle for it to start all over again. And here's another thing to pay attention to. Does their effort continue once they feel secure in the relationship again? Somebody who is afraid of losing you may become the perfect partner for 3 weeks. Suddenly, they are attentive and deeply interested in every concern you have raised for the past 2 years. then you decide to stay. Slowly, the urgency disappears because the consequences have been removed. Appointments start getting missed as the old habits find their way back. Soon, the problem becomes something both of you are expected to move past. That behavior is crisis management. See, real change remains active after the immediate crisis ends. The fear of losing you may start the process, but responsibility has to keep it moving. So don't ask whether your partner is trying right now. Look at what happens once they believe you are no longer leaving. And that brings us to the difference between a difficult season and a destructive pattern. Pain doesn't tell you which one you are living in because, unfortunately, both can hurt badly. A difficult season has direction. The problem may last much longer than either person wants, but the work begins to accumulate. You understand each other more clearly, and the response to the problem starts changing. Progress may be slow enough to frustrate you. Even then, you aren't continually returning to the exact same beginning. See, baby steps forward is still moving forward. A destructive pattern creates movement without direction. After the fight comes another promise, followed by just enough improvement for hope to return. Eventually, the same wound opens again under a slight different set of circumstances. The details change, your experience doesn't. Now, look at the bigger picture. Don't judge the relationship by yesterday's arguments or today's apology. Look back to the first time the two of you agreed that this issue had to change. What is genuinely different now? If the only answer is that you understand the problem better, that might be useful. But understanding was supposed to lead you somewhere. You should be able to identify a real way the relationship is healthier because of the work you both have done. Time by itself proves absolutely nothing, and I can't stand why people still believe this. Spending another year discussing the same problem doesn't mean you gave repair a better chance. It can also mean the pattern received just another year of your life. And here is where dates and clear agreements can actually help. I am not suggesting you hand your partner a corporate performance review every Friday evening, although it would probably keep things on track. It would probably work. But vague promises creates vague waiting. If the two of you agree that something needs to change, you need to define what that looks like and decide when you will honestly revisit this conversation again. Doing this gives repair a chance without turning every decision into an ultimatum. Without something concrete, one person may believe they are improving while the other is quietly reaching the end of their patience. And I know somebody's going to ask me, how long am I supposed to wait? Even though I just told you that time doesn't matter. And anybody who tells you that number has no idea what they're talking about because they're just guessing. The amount of time should make sense for the problem and the work required to address it. And that's between the two of you. A communication habit may show a new direction fairly quickly. Rebuilding after a serious issue will take much longer, although you should still see progress early in the process. The relationship doesn't need to be completely healed by the date you choose to revisit it. What you need is enough evidence to know that repair is genuinely happening. Even coaching has to be measured this way. See, booking an appointment with me is the most intelligent thing that you can do. It's a great start. But what you do between the appointments, as in me giving you exercises and you doing those exercises because you are a good student, will tell you whether you are simply attending or actually using the help. Choose a point where you will sit down and talk honestly about what has changed. The purpose isn't to threaten somebody with a countdown. You are protecting yourself from waiting indefinitely inside a promise with no way to measure it. Now, see, none of this works unless we talk about trust. People often say that trust takes time to rebuild, and that is true. Although time is only the space where the rebuilding happens. Whoever caused the damage has to fill that space with consistency. They need enough patience to understand that an apology doesn't immediately calm the injured person's nervous system. If someone lied for a year, telling the truth for a week won't make every question disappear. An injured partner watches for evidence because the past taught them that trust was unsafe. That doesn't give them permission to punish forever, though. If they choose to remain in the relationship and genuine change continues, there has to be some path for that progress to matter. Forgiveness has to be real, and for it to work, you have to be able to eventually trust that person completely and let all the transactions go. See, whoever is making changes may feel as though nothing they do will ever be enough, while their partner worries that relaxing for one moment will make them look foolish again. And if that's the case, what are we doing? What are we doing here? A person rebuilding trust cannot demand a deadline for forgiveness, 100%. Meanwhile, the injured person has to also be honest about whether true forgiveness is achievable. And here's the thing, sometimes the answer is no. The damage has changed the relationship beyond what they can accept. Staying while making the other person serve a life sentence won't create anything healthy for either of you. And it would be a monumentally giant waste of time. Repair requires the possibility of release. That release happens gradually as new experiences begin contradicting the original injury. A promise won't do it. Repeated honesty gives the injured person a reason to lower their guard. Also, we need to notice the difference between rebuilding trust and being pressured to act less hurt. See, some people become irritated by the consequences of their actions. They say, "I already apologized," as though the sentence should completely restore trust like nothing has ever happened. An apology acknowledges the damage. It does not decide how long healing takes. At the same time, healing can't mean silently creating tests that your partner doesn't know they're taking. If you need more transparency or reassurance, say it and give them a chance to respond. Trust will struggle to return when one person demands blind faith and the other keeps moving the finish line. Rebuilding trust, therefore, takes both people. One person creates the evidence, their partner slowly allows that consistency to influence what they believe is possible. Neither role is easy, but you should be able to see movement in the right direction. You may still feel some fear without needing to check everything. A difficult conversation may happen without immediately reminding you of the original behavior. See, those small changes matter because it shows things are moving in the right direction. But if months or even years have passed and you still feel responsible for catching the next lie, something is massively wrong. Either the other person's behavior never became a safe space, understandable, or you were never able to find a way for true forgiveness and didn't tell them and stayed in the relationship anyway, thinking that the work that they've been doing is going nowhere, essentially. And see the crazy part, love can exist in both situations. A healthy relationship cannot. Which brings us to patience. Patience can be one of the most loving things you can offer another person. It gives growth enough time to become real and recognizes that human beings don't change important parts of themselves on command. Still, patience needs a reason. Waiting becomes dangerous when the only thing changing is what you are willing to tolerate. Your original boundary moves because they had a terrible week. The next incident gets explained by stress, and eventually, you can't even remember what you once said was completely unacceptable. This is how self-abandonment begins, not with a dramatic decision to give up on yourself. Usually, it looks like one or more exceptions made for someone you love. Then the exceptions start to become the relationship. You organize your life around them, preventing the next problem, and calculate how much honesty the relationship can survive that day. Eventually, your peace depends on their mood, while your standards become something you discuss more often than you enforce. Here's a question I want you to sit with. What has staying required you to become? Perhaps you have become more patient while getting better at difficult conversations. A relationship that asks you to grow is 1,000 worth the discomfort. But maybe you have become quieter. You don't bring things up anymore because the aftermath costs you too much. Eventually, you stop trusting your own intuition until 3 other people tell you that you are accepting behavior that hurts you. Staying should not require you to disappear so that the relationship can continue. And I want to be fair here, because sacrifice isn't automatically self-abandonment. There may be a period when your plans and comfort move into the background because the person you love genuinely needs you. Carrying that weight is part of building a life with someone. See, I mentioned 50-50. But it needs to be variable. One day is 50-50. Tomorrow you had a bad day and your partner picks up the slack so you could recharge. Now it's 80-20. They had a death in the family and you need to be the one strong for them. Now it's 10-90. That's what partnership looks like. The difference lives in whether your sacrifice serves us. Too many S's. Your sacrifice serves a shared future or maintains a permanent imbalance. You both need to recognize what is being given and use that support to move towards greater responsibility. You can explain the same limit beautifully every month. If nothing changes when it is crossed, the other person learns that your boundary is actually a conversation they have to survive. And I know that sounds harsh, but a boundary that exists only in language cannot protect you. You don't need to threaten the relationship every time something goes wrong. Consequences should fit the situation and communicate it clearly. The point is that your participation cannot remain identical while the treatment you receive keeps violating what you said was essential. Otherwise, you are hoping your pain will eventually become persuasive enough. Even when somebody understands the boundary, they may still choose what works for them. Narcissists. Now let's bring this all together. If you are trying to decide whether to stay, stop asking only whether you love the person, because here's the thing. If you're getting to this point, you probably do love them, which unfortunately makes the decision infinitely more difficult. Go back to the foundation and look at who they are today. Is the problem sitting on top of a relationship that still fits your life, or has the structure become part of the problem? Once that answer is clear, you can make a map towards repair. Direction across time matters here. Has the relationship become safer, or have the two of you simply come better at recovering from the same issues? Trust needs the same honesty. Can you see the other person creating real evidence, and can you imagine allowing that evidence to matter? After that, turn the attention onto yourself. What parts of you have grown while staying? Which parts of you have gone missing? See, those answers will tell you more than any apology ever could. One more question can cut through a lot of hope. If nothing changed from this point forward, would you knowingly choose to stay in this exact relationship? And don't answer with their potential. I've said it a million times. The person standing before you as they are, meaning use the relationship you have. If the answer is yes, I hope that you are happy and that life makes sense to you. If the answer is maybe, well, an answer that depends entirely on improvement needs evidence before it receives more time. That doesn't mean you have to make a life-altering decision right now. It means hope can no longer be the only thing funding your patience. Have the conversation and define the problem clearly. Agree on what each person will do next, then give the process enough time to reveal whether the effort is real. Not necessarily results. The effort. And hopefully the results come. Then watch what happens. The answer may be that the relationship is worth saving and still capable of becoming healthy again. If so, stay with intention. Participate in the repair while allowing genuine change to count, giving the person you love a fair chance to become more than the mistake they made. Another possibility is that the relationship mattered, yet you are the only person trying to save it. That truth can preserve the meaning of love, but that doesn't mean it should be your future. Knowing when to stay requires more than a perfect formula. You have to stop confusing how much the relationship means with how healthy it is capable of being. At the end of the day, love is not a substitute for happiness. You need both. And that's it. Thank you so much for joining me. I honestly appreciate you so much. If you enjoyed this, or you know somebody that might need to hear it, please share it with them. I would greatly appreciate that. And for more conversations on love, dating, relationships, and self-awareness, you can find my books, podcast episodes, and coaching services at joeyfrancis.com. That's JOEYFRANCESS.com. Be good to yourself and be good to each other. And I want to leave you with this. Love may explain why you want to stay. The relationship itself tells you whether you should actually. Until next time.